I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. This case is, I saw the court hearing yesterday and I had to talk about it. A lot of thoughts came up when I saw it, and I'm interested in chatting about this with you all. Sarah has already mentioned that, and I think the camera caught the individual at a particular time where their eyes were really wide. I have questions about like mental health with this one. And so we are definitely going to talk about this. Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to dive right in. I just realized I need to get the plug for my computer. So give me 1 second while I get that, and I will be right back. Here we go. I have one of those screens. There we go. All right, I didn't mute myself, so y'all probably heard the ugh as I was going to get that, but we're professionals. We're gonna get started. All right. Oh, okay. So somebody else saw it. Okay, y'all saw this. I am so concerned about this. Like, we have got to talk about it. Let's first give an overview of this case. This case is very tragic. Sadly, what happened, the individual who we will be covering today, her 5-year-old son was discovered in a suitcase. And the allegation is that the defendant in this case and a friend of hers, that the two of them thought that this child was demonic. So they have posts online of them talking about him being evil, and somehow what the medical examiner says is that the cause of death is related to dehydration and possibly due to like um, the words I see are vomiting and diarrhea. That that's likely what the poor end of this child's life was like. And there's a part of me that wonders if they were restricting his food or if they were giving him things to make him upset. I don't know that we really know the answers to some of those questions. The other individual in the case, I'm going to share this article. Her name is Dawn. Y'all know me and names. Me and names, I am not good with names. I want to say it's like Coleman. Yes, Dawn Coleman. That she pled guilty to for her role in his death. So Cairo Jordan is the name of um, the defendant in this case, the one that we're covering. That was so his name was Cairo Jordan. And April 16th, 2022, he was found in Indiana in this welcome to Las Vegas suitcase. And they have pictures of it. So, trigger warning for that. And Dawn has already pled guilty to conspiracy to commit capital M. And then she was sentenced to, I believe, 30 years in jail. Well, there was a time when the defendant in this case where she was on the loose and they did not know where she was. And she was finally apprehended. And she's going to make some statements, even when it comes to her name and her birthday. There are going to be things that she says that have me personally questioning her competence. And I don't know if she's doing this intentionally, if she's doing this on purpose, or if there is this kind of Lori Vallow, this deeper delusional thing going on with this individual. I do not know. But let's take a look at her court appearance. Okay. I'm just going to play it.
Clause number 88C01-2210F1833, State of Indiana versus Dejaune Anderson.
So her name is Dejaune Anderson. All right. Remember that.
Ms. Anderson, for the record, would you state your full name, please?
Yes, I am Princess Califia Hatan Tupape II, representing the entity Dejaune Anderson.
For entity language, I've only heard individuals with dissociative identity disorder refer to themselves as an entity, or I don't know, because I think she's also going to claim that she's a part of an indigenous group. And so this whole princess, that name that she gave, her legal name, it's my understanding, is Dejaune Anderson. That is her legal name. And honestly, okay, so she is claiming Moorish sovereign citizen. Okay. It really it was giving me kind of Daryl Brooks vibes, and she is going to talk about representing herself in her case. Let's keep going.
You're known as Dejaune Anderson.
I'm representing the entity as Dejaune Anderson.
Your date of birth?
My date of birth is February 2nd, 1961.
So she was not born in 1961. And so I was in the chat on and like another, I think did I see this live? I might have seen this live. I was in the chat on another channel. She was not born in 1961. And so she's claiming to be like this is just all wrong. Okay. We're going to try to keep going.
That would make you how old?
That'll make me 63 years old.
And the last four digits, your social security number?
I do not have a social security number. I have a declaration of nationality underneath the Washita Moors of the Indigenous People of the United Nations, Chapter 221593.
What's your address?
My address is
Okay, so they are going to bleep this. The whole time she's giving the address, they are going to bleep that. So I'm just going to skip that part. It makes a sound that I don't like.
You're an alcohol today?
No, I'm not.
You read and understand the English language?
Yes, I do.
If I say something you don't understand, will you let me know?
I will most definitely will.
Sanderson. Officer Music, who's investigated this, looked for you for the past 2 years. And Prosecutor Hunt have charged you with 3 counts of criminal conduct. Count 1 is murder as a felony. Would indicate that between April the 10th, 2022 and April the 16th, 2022, in Washington County, state of Indiana, you did knowingly or intentionally kill another human being, that being child victim number 1. Contrary to the form of the statute, such case is made and provided by Indiana Code 35-42-1-1, parentheses 1, and against the peace and dignity of the state of Indiana. Count 2, neglect of a dependent resulting in death as a level 1 felony, would indicate between December the 1st, 2021 and April the 16th, 2022 in Washington County, state of Indiana, you being at least 18 years of age and having the care of child victim 1, a dependent, less than 14 years of age, did knowingly.
So I want to comment on the hand thing that they focused in on. So sometimes like holding your hands in this position, I've seen some body language experts, and Sarah, I think you do some body language stuff. Sometimes this is like to have like dominance or just like sometimes it can be calming as well. Often CEOs or in business meetings, you'll see people make that symbol with their hands. I don't know if she's looking at the prosecutor, but she's given some looks to somebody. Okay. And please go ahead and like the video if you're enjoying it so far to give confidence. Yes. So with behavioral analysis, that sometimes that type of stance can promote confidence. Thanks for that, Sarah. Let's try to keep going.
Place said dependent in a situation that endangered the dependent's life or health and which resulted in the death of child victim number 1. Count 3, obstruction of justice, as a level 6 felony.
So I'm going to fast forward past the judge reading that part. It gets interesting when they start talking about her representing herself and her potential to flee because she is not a resident of Indiana and they have been looking for her for 2 years.
$1,000 fine. The level 1 felony neglect of a defendant resulting in death has a range of imprisonment from 20 years to 40 years, with the advisory sentence being 30 years and up to a $10,000 fine. And the level 6 felony has a range of imprisonment of no time in jail, treated as a misdemeanor, to 2.5 years at the Indiana Department of Corrections, with the advisory sentence being 1 year and up to a $10,000 fine. Do you understand what you've been charged with?
I do understand.
Okay. And do you understand the potential penalties?
I do.
Do you intend to hire a lawyer, or is someone likely to hire a lawyer for you?
I want to file a motion for self-representation.
You understand if you do that, you are required to conduct yourself as a lawyer to be able to board our potential jurors, to abide by the rules of evidence, to abide by the rules of procedure.
I do understand. I have a master's in history,
That doesn't give you a law degree, though.
but I do understand how to read procedures and understand the court procedures.
Right. Just because you represent yourself, that doesn't ensure yourself of a good lawyer, you know.
That's a personal opinion, but I understand.
Make your request in writing. Okay.
I will, most definitely. Can you give me at least just like 5 days and I could get it to you?
I can certainly give you 5 days to do that.
And so this part seems completely logical. Like this part seems completely understandable. And part of this could just be that sovereign citizen uniqueness where the name and that, because I don't know that because she's going to claim that people have been following her and okay. So Sarah asked a great question of how was she found? So according to Indiana State Police, a concerned citizen called in a tip giving away her location in California. So somebody called the Indiana State Police, and then Indiana State Police alerted the U.S. Marshals in California and their local authorities, and they were able to arrest her. And she took the train. Oh, no, she attempted to board a train. Detectives have flown out to California to question her and petition for her extradition back to Indiana, which they were able to do. And it does sound like with Dawn Coleman pleading guilty, the other individual in that case, she is obligated to testify against Anderson. So Dawn Coleman, the individual that was there with her, she was charged with aiding, inducing, or causing the harm or neglect resulting in death and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to 25 years. I thought it was 30, with a 1.5 years credit for time served, followed by 5 years of probation. That is what Dawn Coleman, and it does sound like Dawn Coleman is going to be she's going to have to testify. So let me share. So that's where, so the one on the left is Dejaune and the one on the right is Dawn Coleman. All right. Let's get back to this part.
I think what my intention would be, let me ask you this. Can you afford a lawyer?
It's not that I can't afford a lawyer. It's that I want to do self-representation due to I understand the nature of my case, and I understand that this is my life on the line, and I do understand that there are things that involve my case as far as the evidence that I hold, which is Q classified evidence, which should be turned over to Judge Advocate General Courts immediately, if possible, because my case involves other cases that are open currently with Judge Advocate General Courts, as well as federal investigations that are open.
Well, the judge advocate general approaches us.
So that's the part that sounds a bit off to me. Uh-oh. Can y'all still hear me? Let me know in the chat if you can still hear me. Okay.
Okay.
How about I appoint you standby counsel?
Oh, no, thank you.
No, thank you. All right. You make your written request. I need to advise you, you have a right to a speedy public trial by jury in this case.
Okay. Can y'all hear me? Okay, good. So I am streaming from the office and I love tabs, and so I might have too many tabs open. I'm going to try to close some things. I just the whole that there are other open cases that she's involved with, I don't know that that's true. Like, oh, thank you for this, Christina. So judge general advocates are with the military. So she's going to say that the Space Force has been monitoring her. The Space Force. Yeah. So that's where issues of competency for me come up a little. And Christina, I already ate. It's 3:00. It's 3:00 on the East Coast. I already ate. It comes off a little delusional to me. Now I still think like she could still be legally responsible for her crime and for what she did, similar to Lori Vallow, but I don't know that she's gonna be competent to stand trial when they start in August. I can't imagine her cross-examining people or doing any of that. And so I'm going to keep going because it's going to get a little more interesting.
You have the right to face all witnesses against you, see your question and cross-examine those witnesses. You have the right to have witnesses brought into court to testify on your behalf, and at your request, the court will issue subpoenas requiring those individuals to come into court to testify on your behalf or to bring evidence in. You have the right to have the state prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to remain silent. You cannot be required to give any testimony or make any statements against yourself to anyone. You do have the right to be heard in your own defense at any hearing or trial concerning the charges against you. Anything you say, however, may be used against you. Do you have any questions concerning your rights?
No, I do not.
Then I will set this matter for a pretrial conference on the 25th day of April at 9 a.m. A trial date of the 6th day of August of this year at 8:30 a.m. and an omnibus date of June the 15th. Do you have any questions at all?
No, I do not have any questions.
All right. You'll sign this reappearance slip. We'll discuss the issue of bond. Ms. Hunt, what's the state's position?
Yes, Your Honor. Given the gravity of this case, first of all, I would like for you just to take judicial notice of the probable cause affidavit that the state filed in support of these 3 charges, which resulted in the arrest warrant. I'd also like to bring to the judge's attention that it's almost a 2-year mark of officers locating this, at the time, unidentified little boy in the woods. So I would argue that the defendant has been a fugitive since that time. Her identification has been made. I think that raises any bond in a murder case to be something of the utmost importance and should be of an amount that should be very difficult, if not impractical, for her to be able to afford. Or I feel she will be abscond from this court. She's never been from Indiana. She's not from Washington County, is my understanding. She was located in California. So on that reserve, I would leave that to the court. And if further motion is needed on the state's behalf, I will make that.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, you just made an objection.
Yes.
State the basis of your objection.
The basis of my objection is the fact that I am not a fugitive. I have been under NSA surveillance for the past 8 months, and how can that qualify me as a fugitive on the run when I've also had a detail from Space Force that was following my every move when I contacted
All
the
right.
Indiana State
Well, let me
to
tell
arrest
you,
me?
that is not a valid legal objection. If you want to represent.
So that whole Space Force thing, and if she had said, like, CIA or but, like, why would the Space Force have a detail? Like, Space Force? Space Force. Like, that's where it's just like, ooh, like, this just doesn't seem. So that's where I do wonder, and nobody's gonna ask for a competency hearing. At the end, the judge is going to ask that a lawyer be assigned, because I think if she has somebody representing her side, they are likely going to ask her to have some type of competency evaluation. Like Space Force is about NASA, and it wouldn't be monitoring her, and that was just very, very strange to me, and so there are times that she comes across very intelligent and like she has it together, and then things like that come out and you're like, "Huh?" That just does not seem like somebody that's connected with reality, so that's where some of her reality testing comes up for me. But so to me, Sarah is at least, she's not saying that aliens or Space Force, and so Dejaune doesn't talk about aliens or anything, but like Space Force, she has open cases that involve her, but she doesn't. And she's gonna say that she reached out for them to turn herself in, and it's my understanding that isn't true. And so, we're gonna keep going.
Yourself, you're going to have to learn the rules of evidence and the rules of procedure, because if you conduct yourself like this and make these types of objections, you have no chance in the world, baby.
Okay.
So objection overruled. That I will let you make argument in regards to bond.
Well, thank you.
And she seemed to take that, and the judge doesn't seem to at all be concerned about, like, because so I remember that Las Vegas judge that was very hard on that defendant, and the defendant, like, jumped over the bench to to attack. And we don't know that she has any other history of violence or harm or anything like that. But to me, when the judge said, "That's not how you act," she seemed to take that okay. But I because if I had been in the courtroom, I might have stepped back a little bit. Like, I would have been very aware of where she was, because and not but like, individuals can be impulsive, they can do things without thinking, but she did seem to take it pretty well with the judge saying that.
So that's my argument is that I have been under surveillance by NSA for over 8 months. I also have a detail that follows me everywhere I go from Space Force military. As into, I also contacted Indiana State. I think it was a federal marshal that I called to have my location tracked to pick me up. So there's no type of extent of me running where I need this astronomical bond on my charges.
Well, that's sort of interesting, because it's my understanding Officer Busick has been in touch with almost every one of those agencies, and they haven't been able to identify your location until recently. So I'm going to set your bond at no bond at this particular point in time. If Space Force comes forward and tells me that they're willing to monitor you, we'll take up the issue of bond at a later time.
Okay.
And to me, they're playing into it. Like, why would Space Force have anything to do with this case or this particular defendant? Like, but the judge was being kind, I think, to say, "Okay, we reached out to those agencies. if Space Force is going to monitor you, Space Force doesn't monitor people like that. Like it didn't make any sense. And I was watching it all by myself and I was like, I have to talk about this with the chat. I have to talk about this.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, we'll be off record at 1:44.
So Sarah asked a great question. I do not think that he believed her. I think he's probably aware that either this is a good act or there's some type of something going on, but it hasn't risen to a level where she's being disruptive or where she's negatively impacting court or the hearings. So please remember, Daryl Brooks was found competent to stand trial. Like he was found to be able to represent himself. And he did horrific things in court, tried to derail things all the time. And it was a lot. Like the judge kept kicking him out and putting him over in the other room every so often. That judge was incredibly kind because she kept giving him a chance to be like, Mr. Brooks, will you promise to, I'm not promise, but like, do you give me your word that you're, not going to raise what is it, jurisdiction? He kept saying the same thing over and over again. Y'all are gonna know in the chat. Jurisdiction. Yeah, and I don't think he was mocking her. Like I think he was okay if you think, and I don't even know that the NSA was monitoring her. So like they would monitor people that are at risk of like domestic stuff or like international, like they wouldn't just monitor her. So I don't think that what she was saying was true from my opinion. From just watching this, I don't think that that was accurate at all. There's a little bit left that I want to.
She's remanded to the custody of the Washington County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, Sam, let me see if I can-
I'm going to fast forward because he's going to bring her back.
Oh, 1 second. Go back on. All right.
That's where, if I was the judge, I wouldn't want her standing right there. Like I don't know, like I'm just really big on like boundaries and space and safety. I would not have personally wanted somebody standing right there and that close, but that's just me.
Based upon what I've just heard, I'm gonna ask someone from the Public Defender Office to be assigned to represent Ms. Anderson. If she files a written request and demonstrates that she has the ability to understand and comprehend and represent herself, I may ask them to withdraw or no longer require their services, but I think it's appropriate that someone from the Public Defender Office be assigned at this particular point in time. If private counsel is hired, they can withdraw. We'll be off record.
Thank you.
So y'all, that it just reminded me of competency to stand trial. So with competency to stand trial, the individual needs to understand who the judge is, who their attorney is, what the role, what their charges are, what are appropriate defenses to their charges. Do they understand their rights? And because if they can't participate in their defense, then then sometimes they can then go to a psychiatric hospital or they're on a wing of the jail that receives psychiatric services where they're able to be assessed psychologically to see, do they need to be on some kind of medication? Is there some disconnect from reality? Do they have a diagnosis like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder? Is there some type of delusional disorder? So I do believe Lori Vallow was diagnosed with a delusional disorder, and they were able to restore her competency in order for her to stand trial. But before they did that, they found that she was disconnected from reality and was not able to aid in her defense. So that's a thing. This just so I don't know that she's really a sovereign citizen. Like I don't like she seemed so compliant at times, and that's where this whole thing is very confusing to me. And I, I don't know if she saw other trials, or because she gave a specific number for a group of the Moorish, like that group that she listed earlier. She gave that. Ah, yes. Subject matter jurisdiction. Thank you. Like he was, and I do think for Daryl Brooks, it was all an act. He To me, he was very intelligent and he knew exactly what he was doing. I don't know if he was trying to get a mistrial. I felt sorry for um the woman, or his ex in that case, where their argument seemed to kind of set him off, and then he did all those things that he did. I felt sorry that she had to be cross-examined by him, because he's just his whole demeanor and everything was very antagonistic to the victims, and sometimes he would dial it back because he was also doing it for the jury too. So at times he would he would kind of be appropriate, I guess, and then there were other times that he was just completely off. It seemed like there could be some possible paranoia there, and, it's my understanding that they have some Facebook messages from around the time of the child's, death, where both Dawn, the other individual who's already been found guilty, and then also Dejaune, that both of them were posting saying that he was evil, that he was an avatar. Like there were just very odd things that they were saying that reminded me of this religious extremism, this religious like delusion where people like end up doing something to a child thinking that they're spiritually freeing the child, and all of that stuff is harm, all of that stuff is wrong. You don't do those things. I hate that I even have to say it, but I feel like I do. I agree. I don't think that the NSA or any of that was following her. So there was a wooded area. Let me go back. So I believe the body was recovered relatively, because it's Cairo, Jordan. So let's see. I think the suitcase was found in 2022. Yes. And at first they weren't sure who the John Doe was, and so they did pay to so they did the autopsy and all of that. And then there was an unmarked grave, and then they later um ended up adding his name to his, let me see. Yes. So I believe he was recovered. I want to say it was around April. So I think that's why they're saying something happened between December and April, and he was recovered in April. I do believe that they have phone records of when Dejaune and Dawn were in Indiana, because they never lived there. It seems like they were just kind of past, I don't know, like they never ever lived there. And this whole thing is just very, very sad. Yeah. All right. Let me look at the rest of the questions. It sounded like that religious extremism, cult-like behavior. I agree. I agree that it sounds like that. Oh, and, I haven't mentioned the fact that Chad Dorman, he did uh, his confession was thrown out, which I'm very sad to know, because at one point he asked for a lawyer and they continued to question him, and he ended up confessing after that. And so his confession was thrown out. But I think they'll still be able to use the body camera footage of immediate of when the police arrived to the scene. And so I do think that he will still be found guilty. I don't know if they are going for an insanity defense, and I don't know that he wants to look insane. I personally do not think that he was. Um, I think he did this to get back at mom. I think that was the only reason. I think it was to punish mom, possibly for leaving him or something. Those are just my thoughts. Um, so I have questions. I saw some potential red flags in what she said. The fact that she gave an incorrect birthday, like why would she do that? The birthday she gave is not her actual birthday. She's saying she's 63 years old. I believe she's in her 40s maybe. She's not 63 years old. And I can get past, so like if she is a sovereign, if she did change her name for religious or spiritual reasons, okay. But the birthday thing, that's odd. And also the NSA Space Force comments, that's very odd. If I was a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a psychologist, I would have questions about her competence if I was representing her. Of course, the state isn't going to necessarily raise those questions or concerns. And I don't think she's to an extreme where it's clear that she's not competent, because there are times that she comes off incredibly coherent and she comes across, I guess, normal, or like she comes across in a way that doesn't send off red flags. But then you start questioning certain things, and some things are said that just seem extremely strange and weird. Extremely strange and weird. Because to my knowledge, she doesn't have any connection with the military or with anything like that. I don't know why she would say that. Let's see. Yeah, and it can happen. Somebody that has, something like, schizophrenia, or that is delusional or psychotic, they can seem okay and then snap, which is why if I was the judge, I wouldn't have had her, like, just like, I would have been very aware of where the individual was standing. I think the judge felt safe. She had handcuffs on, the bailiffs were right there. I think the judge felt completely safe. I would have been very aware, because to me, there are some potential red flags that something's kind of off. So I'm not, so hopefully it's not coming across this way. So I don't poke fun. So I'm genuinely concerned about her mental health if she does believe these things, because she could have just been saying these things as part of her defense. She could just be saying this as a way to throw the trial, or to kind of throw things off. I don't know, which is why I think I think a formal assessment would be appropriate. Yeah, I think Brooks was trying to get a mistrial. I agree. I'm catching up on the comments. Yes, yes, yes. And so, from everything I've seen, so I just saw this case recently. So I think yesterday was the first time I had ever heard of this case. And it does seem like Dawn, they might have dropped the murder charge for Dawn if she testified against, because it sounds like what she pled guilty to. So she did not have a trial. She pled guilty to those charges, And it sounds like she is required to testify during this trial. So we will see. And I think they do have fingerprints on the case. They do have like cell phone data, I think, that place Dejaune uh, in Indiana. And so it does sound like there's some pretty good physical symptoms, physical evidence. What happens if someone psychotic becomes attached to extreme beliefs? It's really, really bad. So really, so somebody that's already predisposed to have issues with reality, because there are people that do not have a diagnosis, that if they go down a certain rabbit hole on TikTok or YouTube, they can end up getting radicalized. Like I know people in my life that started believing very odd things, especially during the whole panini during 2020, that but they ended up down these kind of down these like niche, really not believing in like science or logic, or I don't know. Like there was a lot going on. And so I do think that sometimes people can go down those things. He was 5. So he was 5 years old. And it's my understanding that I don't know that they know, but I think he was recovered. It's my understanding. I think they found the suitcase within a few days. I don't have the ability to bleep myself. So it might be my internet connection today has been going like in and out. So typically somebody with psychosis is not going to try to hide their crime. I might do a video on, should somebody with severe mental illness, should they receive the death penalty? Like I might do that next weekend or next Tuesday. We'll see. I definitely want to talk about that. I watched a Vice uh, show on YouTube. I watched an episode of that, and I have some thoughts, because there was one individual that was so psychotic, they were to the point that they read a Bible verse that talked about plucking out your eye if it offends you. And they literally, okay, so trigger warnings for extreme behavior, they literally like plucked out their eye. And then another point, they plucked out their other eye and ate it. So they were on death row. That individual is they did a stay of execution. They ended up deciding to not have that person's going to spend the rest of their life incarcerated. And then there was another individual that also has schizophrenia, and it was documented. They had hospitalizations, and because it was up to the jury, so the jury got to decide, were there any mitigating factors that would say that this person shouldn't have the death penalty? And the jury decided, nope, this individual should. And it was in Texas. My brain can't remember the name of the case, but there were a lot of people advocating that this individual definitely deserved to spend the rest of their life in jail. But that and I think people get afraid that something might happen, and that the individual might be on the loose again. And so it's a really, really hard thing. But psychosis is a spectrum, and it's a range. And I don't know if she's connected to reality. There's some people that have spiritual beliefs that do believe that like people can be possessed, or like they believe those kinds of things. And even if she had those beliefs and she had got the child appropriate help, if she had gotten the child appropriate treatment, and there was no harm, there was no physical, emotional, that there was no type of harm, that is one thing. But it sounds like something happened that resulted in this child not being here anymore, and the child was placed in a suitcase and left. And that's just not okay, no matter what. And she did stay on the run. But yeah, there have been a lot of religious cults. There's a lot of extremism that's happening on the internet. It can happen quicker because like algorithms will start to feed you what you're watching. So like my YouTube algorithm is all true crime, Disney and travel videos and comedy. And like that is what my algorithm is. Now, if I started watching a lot of, let's say, if I start watching, if there was a for some reason, if I'm following some cult leader, if I start watching a lot of that, the algorithm would start to feed me more of that kind of stuff. And I do think because there have been some lawsuits, I think YouTube was sued. There have been some lawsuits about the way that algorithms can kind of influence some of that extreme content not be recommended. Because what happens with the algorithm is if a video is doing really well, the algorithm will start to recommend the video to people where it wouldn't naturally just show up in their feed. The algorithm actually recommends it. So any of my videos that get over like 5,000 views or more, a lot of those views come from YouTube showing it to a whole bunch of people. And some people watch it, some people don't. But like the more people that watch it, the more that video gets recommended out to other people. And so it's a whole thing. Um all right. So I don't know because somebody mentioned a case and I don't know that case. So somebody said SpaceX? I don't know. And SpaceX is different from Space Force. SpaceX is Elon Musk company. Okay. So you know my ADHD and I haven't even finished my coffee from today. Oh, thank you. I like this shirt. Thank you. And like Sarah said, never apologize for ADHD, especially not in these chats. Um 2020, 2021, like there really was an explosion in extreme kind of content. I'm even careful with my news. So when a tragedy happens, because even with the Baltimore Bridge, which I talked about, anytime something happens, if you watch one news station, they'll give you one certain spin. If you watch another news station, they're going to have a completely different spin. And so to me, I think we should just get the facts. Like I don't need a spin. Like just tell me what's happening because there was all this speculation that the Baltimore issue that it could have been related to like that scary T word and it wasn't that like some foreign country could have been and it just none of that was true and it really just added to like fear and all of that which is problem. Yes, this is where the neurospices all get to connect. Yes. And thank you for saying this. People I know who suffer from paranoia and have fixations have fallen into some of these horrible online groups. Yeah. They are completely rational. So getting help for them is very hard. Yes, because nobody can force them to take their medication. Nobody can force them unless they're dangerous. So unless there's a risk to harm to self or others, and that chance of being a risk that can happen, that can shift quickly, where somebody might not realize that they're so upset at the government that I saw that recently that somebody, a former Navy veteran or something, that somebody like rammed an FBI like block. I don't know that somebody did something inappropriate. I think they like rammed into like a FBI blockade in Atlanta or something. And so, all right, let's see. All right. Oh, so I do want to talk more about religious extremism. I did videos on twin flames and because we're seeing more and more of it. Um, yes. All right. And some people, so I also love to do that reminder that people with schizophrenia, people that have certain diagnoses, they are more likely to harm themselves or like to be the victim of somebody scamming them or something that most of them do not do crimes. There are people that do end up doing crimes. And so, yes. And I covered, Sandy mentioned a case, Susan Smith. Did I cover that one? I'm not sure. I've covered a few of those because there was somebody that was going to be released, or they were up for possible parole, and they said that they needed to stay, that they weren't ready to get out. And so that was that. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That Atlanta thing was wow. Um uh so there is a religious persecutions, or this persecutions, like that can be a symptom of schizophrenia, or of like one of the psychotic disorders that the individual feels they are under surveillance. Now it's different if I feel like, my phone is, because if I start talking a lot about wanting something on Amazon, I might start to get ads for it. Like that's not paranoid. Like that's, my phone's always listening. Like it is. But then there are some other people that are like, you know, where they're thinking they're being followed, and they're thinking all these other things, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. That came up with a case that I talked about recently. I have a whole court playlist. If you love the court stuff, I have a whole court playlist where I've covered a whole bunch of stuff. And Denny mentioned that Susan Smith is up for parole this year. Wow. We will see. We will see. Is she the one? Because I don't think it was her. I think it was somebody else. Because a father whose wife unalived the children came forward in support of making sure that the woman up north, I think it might be like Massachusetts. Y'all know me and places and names. It gets a little, me and names, not good. But he came out in support for that individual being assessed for mental health. And she's the one that's paralyzed because she jumped out the window. And there are questions of, was she experiencing mental health concerns or was she not? Like there are these questions. The state seems to think that she intentionally sent her husband on an errand. Yes, Lindsay Clancy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the state seems to think that a lot of the evidence is pointing to this not being mental health related, or that she was very aware that what she was doing. Because if she just thought, if things were just so bad and she just was going to do it, that she wouldn't have went through all the things that she did to like save herself, make sure that she wasn't serious, that she didn't, because I guess like she didn't like throw herself out the window. It's my understanding that like she might have kind of slid down or something weird. Like there are just all of those types of issues. Yes, Massachusetts. Good, good. Yeah. So the allegation is that she premeditated, and we don't know. It's my understanding that she is still in a mental institution right now, and that they are doing that. Can you premeditated and still be psychosis? So also, just because somebody's psychotic doesn't mean that they're not criminally responsible. So often the ones that might be found not guilty by reason of insanity is the person, when the cops arrive, that they're like, glad you're here. Like, I just freed them from these evil spirits or something. But the ones that kind of try to hide the act, hide their behavior, deny it, all of those things, a lot of times the the state and juries, a lot of times that will not seem that way. There are some people that have been found not guilty by reason of insanity, and not every state has that. Because it's not just that there's mental illness, it's also that because of that mental illness, that individual was unable to understand the lethality, like that their behavior could result in somebody not being here anymore, or that like they didn't understand that the behavior was wrong. And that part is really, really hard to prove. Really, really, really hard to prove, because we're always assessing it after the fact. You're never assessing it beforehand unless they have some pretty extensive mental health history, which will sometimes happen. And then also with the drug induced one, there are states like Florida that say that if it is a substance induced issue, that if the person voluntarily took the substance, that they can't be found not guilty by reason of insanity. And so it's a very, very rare thing for somebody to be found not guilty by reason of insanity. It's very, very difficult because also the people assessing it are looking at their mental state at the time of the crime, but you're always looking at it after the fact. And it's really, really difficult to get that assessment of what was going on with them at the time of the crime. We know that, what's her name? Letitia Stout. She tried. She tried to have multiple personalities. She tried so hard. And she found Dr. Lewis to get up there and say all those things she said. And the jury did not buy a second of it. And the evidence pointed to like, she called out sick from work. She set all these things in motion that it just doesn't feel psychotic. Like it sounds like somebody that was just jealous of their stepchild, which is ridiculous. Like, she's the worst. The absolute worst. Like, that whole testimony that is probably the worst expert testimony. That's just my opinion. That is some of, and y'all know, I try to say things. So interesting. That was very, very interesting testimony. It had, and I don't think Dr. Lewis had like dementia or anything. I just think she was very committed to, a lot of people have DID that goes undiagnosed. I'm the expert and I'm great at finding it. But she would not admit that Letitia could be lying, that she could be doing this just to get out of like her crimes. And that Dr. Lewis would never admit that, which is ridiculous. And so her son was in the room. How? Why? I've never, and her lawyer. So Leticia's lawyer was in the room during the assessment giving suggestions. Like, what? Who does that? It did great for my channel. It was, and it got to a point where I was just like, I cannot watch any more of this. So for the case I covered today, Dejaune Anderson, I will just be following this and seeing what happens with it. I would not be surprised if when a public defender does meet with her, if a public defender asks for a mental health assessment. That would not surprise me at all. But my thing is competency to stand trial, not insanity so I don't, from what I've seen, I don't know that there's any reason why she shouldn't be found responsible if it is true, if all the evidence is true. But I don't know that she's competent to stand trial. That's my question mark of, can she participate in her defense? Does she fully understand what representing herself, what that's going to entail? I think she will think people are questioning her intelligence. And I'm not saying that she's not smart enough to do it. Like, it's not a matter of her intelligence. It's a matter of her not understanding the law and not understanding like what an appropriate objection is. And Daryl Brooks, he ended up getting a lot of the lawyers' notes. And I think he used some of that language that the lawyers did prepare before he decided to represent himself. And so, all right. And so thank y'all for watching. I have to head out, but I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. If nothing major pops up, I will see y'all on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I hope y'all have a good one. Bye.